So, hello, Martin.
Hello.
That's a good start, isn't it?
I enjoyed it. Good. Is it you?
Yeah, and that's it. Are
Yeah.
we there yet?
Why do you
So,
why do you explain to the listeners what the fuck's going on?
yes, I'll do that. So I've been following. Martin's a dear friend of mine who I've known for many years now, and I've been following his podcasts for the last few weeks and loving every minute of it. It's the highlight of my Friday, actually. And then I had a thought a couple of days ago. Martin's interviewing everybody else. So why don't I have a go at interviewing him for a change? And this is where we are now, listeners. We're here. My name's Simon Lowery. I'm sitting in my living room in Munich, Germany, and I'm interviewing my very dear friend, Martyn Ware, who is sitting in what looks like a studio somewhere in
It is in King's
another
Cross
country, I guess.
in London. Yes. And
Yeah,
this is
so
Electronically Yours with Martyn Ware podcast. We're doing a strange kind of variant. It's the London variant of the podcast, which we're hoping is going to go viral. Not bad, eh?
not bad at all, mate. Not
That's
bad
good.
at all.
And
So
yeah, go on, Simon. So I'm going to let Simon take over from here on in. I am just a willing participant.
So let's start at the beginning there, how we met. Can you remember how we met? Just a very short story? I can.
Uh, yeah, I have a kind of. I can't remember how it came about. Can you fill me in on that?
Yes, I can. You were doing a rewind or something with a very dear friend of ours, Ricky Wilde,
That's right.
who had told you, I believe, that he'd just come back from this crazy place in the Atacama Desert.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, and Simon, why don't you explain what your job is, and this will make things clearer for the listeners, probably.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So basically, I work for a company called ESO. Well, it's more of an institution, European Southern Observatory. We have the largest telescope on the planet at the moment in Chile, in South America. It's called Paranal, and I'm the communications specialist for the whole of ESO, which means I have to travel to Chile quite often. And a few years ago, well, quite some years ago now, probably 10, 15 years ago, I started to get a little bit friendly with, actually, believe it or not, by Facebook. I ended up getting friendly with a chap called Ricky Wilde, who we're both friends with, brother of Kim Wilde. And one thing led to another, and then Ricky decided that he wanted to come and visit this crazy place in the middle of the Atacama Desert, which he did do, and kind of blew him away. But I think you could probably tell more about that,
Yeah.
being blown away by it. So the next thing what happened, the way Martyn and I came onto each other's radar, was by Ricky telling Martyn about this crazy experience he had at
Yeah.
my workplace. Now, do you want to take over, mate, and
Yeah, I
explain a little
will.
bit?
I will. Yeah, we met. We were introduced, and then we met at Wembley Park Tube Station. I remember it very well.
Exactly, me too.
And I didn't know what to expect, really. I mean, Ricky, who's the brother of Kim Wilde, of course, and is a good friend from all the shows that we do on Rewind, etc. He said this guy Simon is a bit of a nutcase, but he's a very interesting nutcase, and you should meet him. And if you're interested in um, astronomy, which I am, he's your man because he could probably get you also an invite to this place called Paranal in the middle of the Atacama Desert in Chile to see the heavens like you've never seen them before. And I thought, well, what have I got to lose? So I met you anyway at Wembley Park Tube Station. And Simon is a big music fan, so he's interested in various artists, particularly from the 80s. And we quickly became friends, and he kindly offered to take me to Paranal, which I couldn't quite compute, to be honest. It all seemed highly unlikely this was ever going to come up. I couldn't figure out if you're a fantasist, to be honest. But then I trust Ricky, so I thought, well, I don't know what we've got to lose. Anyway, it turns out you're not a fantasist; you're just an extraordinary person. So um, we ended up going to Paranal, which is actually featured heavily in the James Bond film, isn't it? The which
That's
one is
right.
it? Spectre, is it?
No, it's bugger. I forget what they call it now. Quantum of Solace. That's
Quantum of
it.
Solace.
Quantum of Solace. That's the
Not
one.
one of the greatest James Bond's films, but that section is bloody amazing.
It is, and I was there when they filmed that. Actually,
Yeah, you were in the cockpit of the what was it? The DC.
yeah, DC-3. I flew that DC-3. I didn't take off, but I actually flew it at one point. I flew
Wow.
in it from Antofagasta Airport, which you know
Yeah.
very well,
Yeah.
to the landing strip in Paranal, which was one of the craziest things I've ever done in my life. But
Well,
really a crazy time.
I have to say that to cut a long story short, the experience that I had, which Simon enabled us to have, and the other kind people at ESO, by the way, I mean, it's because if they didn't agree, it would never happen.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
Simon's powers of persuasion are quite legendary. Meant that when I'm, lying on my deathbed, which hopefully won't be for quite a while yet, fingers crossed, touch wood veneer. It will be one of the top 3 experiences of my life. To share that with a good friend like Simon, but also to witness the heavens in a way that you only kind of imagine from National Geographic films or magazines, and stuff that you think is, now we're so used to things being accentuated, highly colorized, and actually when you're there, it's more than that. There's something very special about being in the desert, which I didn't realize. It's the driest place on earth. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. And the reason why the telescopes, there are several telescopes there. The reason why they chose that spot on Earth is because it's the driest place on Earth, which means that there's very little, obviously, moisture in the atmosphere, which means there's very little twinkling of the stars. So when you're looking at the stars, you go to this place and you look up at the heavens, and it just looks like a giant immersive star cloth. It doesn't look real. It looks, you can completely understand how the ancient civilizations that lived in that part of the world would look up at the stars and go, they're pretty close, really. They look quite close in a strange sort of way. Do you
Well,
agree?
I can remember taking it, and it's one of my most vivid memories that I have of taking you out onto the Parallel platform at some time after midnight.
Yeah.
With Eleanor,
Yeah, with Eleanor. Yeah,
we walked out,
my daughter.
and Eleanor was like, "Wow!" and she was zipping about all over the place, and you and I were just talking and talking and talking. And I remember, I don't know if I made this up in one of my fantasy movies that I have going on in my head, but I remember saying to you at one point, "Look up." And you went, "What?" And I said, "Look up." And you looked up, and it's very dark. You looked up, and your eyes had already adjusted. And I couldn't say the expression on your face, but it clearly blew you away.
Oh, it blew
Now,
my mind.
did I make that up, or did that
No,
actually happen?
that's probably an understatement. I mean, in my mind's eye, my memory, even if I didn't do it, I felt like I wanted to drop to my knees in awe. And I've never, I think the closest I've come to that kind of feeling was, watching the birth of my child.
Yeah.
It was right up there as a kind of stunning epiphanal moment of realization of how utterly insignificant we all are compared to the majesty of the universe.
Yes, we are super small when
Uh,
and you see it and feel it when you're out there.
and not only that, it was on that particular night there was no moon, So the the stars were just incredibly bright, and you know, you see videos and David Attenborough stuff that it just blows my mind that the way that you see things on a film is like looks very accentuated, but in reality, for instance, the Milky Way was just incredibly bright.
Yeah, I
And
just
I
sent you a
remember,
photo of that earlier. I don't know if you looked
yeah,
at
we
it.
got some photos actually, which perhaps I might be able to share on the podcast. And I remember you saying to me, Martyn, go down to the kneel down and place your hand just above the floor.
Yeah.
And I did that, and I went, there's an actual shadow from the stars and the Milky Way were so bright that you could see a shadow on the floor of your hand, and it just anyway.
And
We're so used to light pollution now. This is the other thing we should tell people.
yeah.
We're so used to light pollution that we've become kind of um, everything. You don't see subtleties in light differences, but we were in a darkened room for an hour before we went onto the platform, which acclimatizes your eyes, and they are not allowed. Am I right in saying they're not allowed to have? They're not allowed to have any light at all within
Oh, no.
20 miles or something, is it?
Well, it's not. It's not allowed is not the correct same, because anybody can do what they want in Chile. So if somebody wanted to build a mine, which they have just done not very far away from us, which is lit on, it's about 20 kilometers away. But generally speaking, we put the telescope there because there's no other life, there's nobody else, and there is no light. So that's what you say is correct, but it's not allowed. It's just it's
Oh,
by
right.
design. It's by
Yeah, yeah.
design.
I
But
mean, even the kind of, they tell visitors that the cars should only use side lights, for instance. Is that right?
yeah, because there's 2 miles. There's 2 miles between the base camp where you sleep. I don't know if you remember James
Yeah,
Bond blew that up.
yeah.
There's 2 miles between there and actually parallel telescopes. So what happens when you're driving up there on the night? You have to drive up with no lights on, and
That's right.
I don't know if you can remember, but it's quite a bit scary.
It's quite interesting, and the reason for that is because the telescopes are so sensitive that any extraneous light it will ruin their results. Is that correct?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So anyway, we did that, and that was an incredible experience, and it's something I'll never forget in my life, and we've remained friends ever since. And it's our mutual love of science and music that really is the important thing, I think.
It is. There's one more thing that I'd like to just mention for the sake of it while we're on the Paranal trip. I mean, we also went to a place called Alma,
Yes.
which is very close. I think we drove over. I don't remember. I think we drove over, which is about
Yeah.
5 hours across the
Yeah.
desert. Had a lovely time until I had forgotten that you were leaving a day later.
Yeah.
Do you
Thanks for
remember
that.
that?
Thanks for that. Yeah. But actually, it was good because we got an extra day in Chile, and then so Eleanor and I decided to do our own trip.
Yeah, you went
Uh,
in a taxi or something, didn't you?
yeah,
You
we
took a
hired
taxi.
a taxi and went out into the desert. Said to the taxi driver, "Find us something interesting to go
Yeah,
to." And he took us to the Valle de Aguirre, the Valley of the Rainbows,
yeah,
which is quite famous, where it's like a hill that's like in different candy-colored stripes, essentially,
yeah.
which are all have all been exposed over many millennia, um, due to different minerals being part of the strata. And again, you look at this, and I've still got videos and photographs of it, and it just simply doesn't look real. I mean, you think it looks like something that Disney would create, you know. Um, can and the it's called Valley of the Rainbows, and Yeah. So we wouldn't have got to see that were it not for the fact that you were a complete fucking twat.
And bizarrely, in my 50 plus trips to Chile, I think it's probably more like 60 plus now,
Yeah.
I've never been there. Not
No.
only have I, no, I haven't managed it yet. Not only have I never been there, every time, because I normally drive to
Yeah. Yeah.
Alma, every time I drive past it, because it's on the turnoff for it's on the main road, and I drive past it, I think, fuck, this time I'm going to go. And it never happens.
Oh well, you should definitely. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an interesting thing as well. We were driving out there with a complete stranger, no mobile signal, nothing. You know, he could have been a mass murderer for all we know. And we get to this little roundabout just before there's like 3 roads leading off it, and roundabout really. There's like 3 trucks a day go past, and we go round it. And I'm going, is this guy lost? Because he goes round it once, then he goes round it again, then he goes round it again. And I said to him, because he only spoke broken English, I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, it's to pay respect to the ancient gods."
Okay. I
I'm
didn't know
going,
that. That's a new
yeah,
one.
yeah, and I'm going, okay. It's like a thing that all the drivers who live in that area do.
Okay.
On the way there, as well, which I've just remembered, he took us to some Neolithic petroglyphs.
Okay.
You ever seen those?
No.
It's like
I haven't.
5,000-year-old cave carvings and a giant wall full of drawings with stuff that looks like aliens, right? And I'm going,
This
okay,
is it. This is it.
we've made it. So I thank you for that as well. And really, it's led me down the path of massive interest in. I've always been interested in space and science. It's a passion of mine, and I remember we stayed in the houses at the bottom of the hill where Alma is, right?
Yeah.
Alma, in some adobe.
Yeah.
Place.
It's called Apex.
Apex, that's it.
Yeah.
And there was one of your friends who just had like a kind of prosumer version of a telescope, but really good, which had
Yes, I remember
a
that.
computer built in that
Yeah.
you could type in. All right, I want to look at Saturn,
Yeah.
and it knows to look at it. You give it the date, and it knows exactly where it is in the sky, and it flips to it. Right, saves you searching around, and just this thing, which is probably like a couple of grand's worth of telescope. I'm looking through the eyepiece, and there's just Saturn there with all the rings and everything, and I'm going, this is just mind bending. You know, these people are doing, have got these things. Half the time they're looking through the biggest telescope in the world at the heavens, right? And the rest of the time, even in the spare time, they're looking at the heavens. You know,
They're really passionate about what they do. You must admit. I mean, you've seen it firsthand.
oh no, it's incredible. And you know, amongst the other things that we've done together, you kindly introduced me to your friends at the Munich base, where you know they got the control room for the for various things, don't they? And we actually we went in there, and they've got the space station up on the screen, and I'm going. You know, I was thinking, oh God, I'd really like to have a chat with them, you know, but obviously that's quite precious time for
it is.
people in there.
It is.
But I mean, I'm looking at it, and it's like some Ken Adams set from a James Bond film, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's actually real. That's the International Space Station control center, which is it's very close to ESO. It's less than half an hour's drive from ESO in Munich. And my friend, he used to be the director there. He isn't now. He's had to retire through ill health. But yeah, he invited us down. I think we went down with Gabriel, didn't we?
Yeah.
With your son.
Yeah.
And that was just, you know, I mean, I've been a few times, but actually walking in there into this room it's the epitome of what you would see on the television of NASA.
Exactly.
You know, it's like,
Exactly.
oh my God, I'm in NASA. And then you see like astronauts floating about on
I know,
this
it's
huge
just ridiculous.
screen.
And the spacewalks and all the stuff that you dream about when you're a kid.
Yeah.
So I've been very, very fortunate, thanks to you, Simon. And also, um, I mean, we decided also another time I decided I want to interview some astronauts, and he said, "Oh yeah, no problem."
Yeah,
So
we done that, didn't we?
yeah, people who've been up into space and stayed on the space station for a
Yeah.
significant amount of time. I actually filmed all that, and I've still somewhere there's a drive on it with all that. I've still not edited it together. That's something I should do during lockdown. Actually, just reminded me.
Well, I hope
So,
lockdown doesn't last much longer, but
well, welcome
let's
to
not go there yet.
yeah.
Let's not.
You're not on COVID Island, are you? Where we are.
No, we're on a high at the moment. We can go low a little bit
Yeah,
later, but
I
let's
think
stay on the high for the moment.
yeah. Don't worry about that.
But
So
I do have one very important question to
yeah,
ask you
go on.
related to Chile.
Yeah,
I do remember that I believe we were in the guest house the night before we left on this massive journey.
yeah.
And you sat down and you said to me, you said, Simon, I need to ask you a question. And I said, go on, shoot. What is it? He said, and you said, you're not going to bury me upside down in the desert, bugger me and leave me there, are you? And I said no. Now I want to know.
But not in that order.
Maybe not. but I said no. You know that wasn't really my thing, and I just want to know if we're over that yet, if we've passed that hurdle.
Yeah, it was still quite scary driving 2.5 hours through the desert with literally no other life forms. I mean, no, nothing, not even cactuses for most of it.
That's correct.
It was quite incredible, and I'm going.
Yeah.
I couldn't quite get over my thought that I didn't know you that well at that point. I mean, you know, obviously we know each other a long time now,
Yeah.
and we've done loads of stuff together. But at that point, I'm going, maybe he really is a psychopath, and he's going to like chop me up.
But it could have been. It could have well been. You know, who knows?
What
You took a
thing to do in
chance.
front of my daughter, I thought.
you took a chance, and I hope. I mean, joking aside, I hope to this day that you happy that you took the chance.
Oh,
I certainly am. I mean, some of the stuff that we've done together is absolutely absurd.
It is. It is. Well, another great thing is, I mean, I know. Look, I'm not Professor Brian Cox, nor would I want to be, but I am very, very interested in science and all these things. So I feel incredibly privileged to do things like Simon enabled me to go and visit CERN in Switzerland.
That was cool.
Fucking hell! I mean, but not only that, not just go to the site where it's at and go into the kind of interpretation center and see the original computer where the internet started. That
the internet that we are on now.
The original desktop computer that it ran off.
Yeah.
And it's got a sticker on it saying "Do not switch off." That's always fucking hilarious.
So if you turn that off, maybe the whole internet will die.
Yeah, originally. So, but not only that. Anyway, that was impressive enough. But it turned out that it was at the time where they have to do annual maintenance for a couple of months, don't they? Or they do upgrades and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Now, normally, the actual CERN Large Hadron Collider, which is the giant machine thing which creates the field which shoots hadrons around a giant loop underneath the mountains and everything. That is so radioactive that you can't go down to that level unless you have special clearance and like hazmat suits. And
I think it's about 100 meters down, isn't it?
Yeah, it's incredible. Anyway, so we happened to be there when they were doing the maintenance, so we could actually go down and see it for real. Now, I mentioned Ken Adam. It was Ken Adam who did all the early James Bond stuff. believe me, that is more James Bond than any James Bond set I've ever seen. It's just ridiculous, isn't
It's
it?
a kind of cross between James Bond and Aliens, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you're down there with all
It
the
looks like it's like being on another planet.
yeah.
There's so many airlocks and all that stuff. It's literally, in fact, I'm amazed it's never been used for a film.
I'm
So
not. I think they have. I think that they've based movies on it. But
yeah,
wasn't Angels and Demons something to do with that? You know, the
yeah.
not Medusa Touch. There's a movie, The
Oh,
Medusa
that's a great
Touch.
film. Yeah, love that.
What a movie that is. I forget what they call him with Tom Hanks. That movie where he's the Code, Da Vinci Code. There's a little bit of it in there and a little bit of it in the follow up to that. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but I don't think they've ever actually physically made a movie down. Come on, Martyn, you were there. How the hell would they get everything down there? It would be a struggle.
Yeah, it's true. But the interesting thing is that the people who run CERN are very interested in doing kind of artistic interpretation of the data
Yeah, absolutely.
that they
Yeah,
get from all this stuff, because it's pretty. I mean, I'm interested in science and I'm not a stupid guy, but I still get really freaked out and trying to understand quantum physics and stuff like. And they're talking about potentially time travel ultimately,
yeah, yeah.
and translocation of matter, like the matter transporter in Star Trek.
Exactly.
Quantum superpositions, and oh my god.
And they
Anyway,
talk about it. They talk about it like it's a real thing. Like, yeah, well, next week we're going to send a potato from here to South America and see
to
if it works.
to
And
to Tesco's, yeah, and let's talk about. No, you're
yeah,
into
I'm interviewing you. Just remind me, who did we go with? Because in my head, Paul Young was there.
yeah, Supertramp.
I thought it was the guy from Supertramp. And the only reason I remembered that was because you posted something somewhere like, I'm at CERN with Supertramp. How the fuck did that happen?
No, exactly. One thing I must say is that for years I used to joke to my wife Lansley and say, I think Simon's secret agenda is to create an arc full of 1980s and 1970s pop and rock stars and create a breeding colony on some alien planet.
You've got me. You've got me. The ark's actually half built in my garage. It's very small. So it's very clear that we've done some amazing stuff together, and some of the stuff has been really highlights of my life, hanging about, going to these crazy places, being in the space station control center, being in Chile, being in CERN. But we do share another passion, both of us, which I've had this passion for, 22 years since I first went there. But that second passion is Venice.
Yes.
We're both big, we're almost Venetians. Now, my question to you is very simple. How did you get onto Venice?
Right.
What brought you there?
What brought me to Venice? My first wife, Karen, we got married in 1980 when I first moved down to London, and around about that time we started. I split from the Human League and started Heaven 17 and the British Electric Foundation, my production arm. It was an exceptionally busy time. I mean, within 2.5 years, I released Penthouse and Pavement, Luxury Gap, the first BEF album, Musical Quality and Distinction Volume 1, plus started my production career, plus worked with various up and coming kind of acts producing them, and then I got my big break, which was to produce Tina Turner. And so for 3 years I didn't have a holiday at all, and during which time, just before I met my wife, just before I married my wife in 1980. Yeah. She had been touring the world on a cruise ship, basically. She was a dancer. And one of the places that she went to, actually, it wasn't the world, it was the Mediterranean. So, and the Adriatic. So she basically, for most of the time, she spent quite a lot of time going to Venice every Saturday, and had a few hours in Venice. And of course, they move on to, I don't know, Split or whatever, and then. But she fell in love with Venice, and so when we got married, she said, "Oh, look, I'd love to show you Venice." And I'm going, "No, I'm too busy to doing this. I'm in the studio like 6 days a week,
Yeah.
doing shit." Eventually, I said to her, "Look, we're going to go. I've got a window of opportunity of like a couple of weeks, but I'm going to make it really special. We're going to go on the Orient Express, which
Beautiful.
I love trains anyway, and I'd always wanted to go on the Orient Express, and of course it ends up in Venice, which was an amazing experience. I mean, God Almighty, what an incredibly luxurious thing to do. Just felt like you were in a film, really.
Would you do that again? Because I'm thinking about doing it.
Well, this is like what 40 years ago now.
Yeah, but still, you can still do it. You can
No,
still do
I
it.
know you can, but what I'm saying is I don't know what the experience is like now, because it's still a very, pretty bluntly, it wasn't cheap at all,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
sure it's incredibly expensive now. But I don't. I think it was more unusual then, and I'm not sure. Well, it's very elite if you think about it. The carriages they were using were some of the original carriages from like the 40s, 30s. One of them was a chinoiserie carriage. There was another one that was the restaurant carriage, which was part of Winston Churchill's private ex. And all the carriages had their own characteristics and decorations and piano bar and oh my god,
On a train.
on a train, and you go to sleep just laughing. It was so brilliant.
Yeah.
And then you wake up and you're in the Alps going through whatever it is. I think you go through the Simplon Tunnel or something.
Yeah, yeah. You
And
go
then
across the top.
you end up, and they deal with all the passports while you're asleep.
Yeah.
That's great. So anyway, of course, I'd never been to Venice before, so we land slap bang in the middle of Venice on the Grand Canal. And
Piazza di Roma.
yeah, and I'm going at Piazzale. Well, yeah, yeah, near there. And I mean, just one of those jaw-dropping experiences. You come straight onto the Grand Canal, and you're going, I can't believe this is real. This is how naive I was at the time. I'd not even booked a hotel. We just got a couple of suitcases. Said, "Oh, there's loads of hotels. We'll find somewhere." Of course, it was boiling hot.
Mm.
We were wandering around the streets. And the first two hotels we went to, we couldn't find. They were all full. I'm going, oh god. We'd identified a couple that we could try, but they were full. And I said, all right, look, we're just going to have to spend a bit more money than anticipated. So we ended up at the Daniele Hotel, which is one of the two most famous hotels in well, three perhaps. After the Cipriani and the Gritti Palace, probably the most famous hotel in Venice. It's a 14th century palazzo that was owned by a Doge, Doge Dandolo, who led the famous invasion of Constantinople in the 14th century. And opulence is really just ridiculously opulent. So from being kind of sweaty and wandering the streets in Venice to getting a room there and having a kind of delayed honeymoon was just mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
So that was my first experience, and I fell in love instantly with Venice as an entity.
Yeah.
Not as a city. To me, it's sentient.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. That's exactly what happened to me
So
back.
tell me about how you.
So the the okay, one thing for anybody who hasn't been to Venice, just something what popped in my mind when you were talking there. Wandering around looking for a hotel with a couple of suitcases is not a pleasant
No, it's
experience,
not.
not by any stretch of the imagination, because I don't think you can actually walk more than 50 meters or 60 meters without hitting a bridge while there's
Yeah,
steps to go
yeah,
over
that's
and
right.
down the other
And
side.
also, it was rammed. It was in August, so
Yeah.
it's like super hot and incredibly crowded. It's not crowded at the moment, as you can probably imagine. But
Oh,
anyway,
as we know, but yeah, so I can sympathise with you for that part. But my first experience with Venice was when I first came to work in Germany. Of course, I'm this dopey northerner who doesn't know his ass from his fucking elbow, and I end up getting this job working for the world's largest telescope and working with a lot of what I considered foreigners at that point. That was the word I would have used,
wow.
and I quickly latched onto an Italian guy who lived very close to Venice in a place called Spinere. And the Italians in them days, for anybody who doesn't know, Munich to Venice is about 5 hours drive. And it's a simple drive. It's just almost a straight line. And the Italians used to go back every weekend.
Right,
So
right.
literally the second weekend I'm working in Munich and I still don't know my ass from my elbow. I've met this guy and he said, come home to Venice with me, or come to Spinner and I'll take you to Venice. And I was like, well, what the hell what do I want to go to Venice for?
Yeah.
I can't, I can't agree with you more. Venice is sentient. It's not just the place; it's the people, it's the movement, the water, the
No
feel,
cars.
the smell,
Yeah.
the everything about it. It's just, I walked. So we went by car, and we went to Piazza di Roma, and of course you drive across the the
Ponte
name's
di
gone.
Liberta.
Yes. And you see the big ships and all that kind of. Oh, this is cool. And then you end up at this place, and you get out of the car. My friend Jacopo, he packed the car up. We got out and we walked out into the canals, and I was just like, this is not real.
Yeah.
This does not exist. Not in any history books, in any, I'm talking 22 years ago now. So there wasn't this like high definition TV where you could get a good view of stuff and things like that. And books were, well, I'm from the north of England. I can't read yet, but it was absolutely an experience which will stay with me for the rest of my life.
Oh, absolutely.
However, what I do find utterly fascinating, I now have a very, very dear friend who Ermano, lives in Venice,
Yeah.
born and bred in Venice, doesn't have a car. There's no cars, obviously, doesn't have a car license, has a boat, which last time we were in
Yeah.
Venice, we went out onto the Laguna to watch the sunset.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Incredible. Yeah.
And you know Venice better than he does.
Yeah, I do.
You know Venice.
Well, I'll tell you the story. A short story about my experience with Venice. So, um, as I say, first went to Venice in '83, I think it was, and then I was married to Karen, and we got divorced in 88, I think. Um, so we were, going there, and I was in love with Venice and spending a lot of money on first class hotels, and then we got divorced, and then for a couple of years, I uh, decided to have a kind of early midlife crisis, and not really. No, I was in my 30s, so I was uh, dating a lot of people and taking girls and women out to Venice, which has always worked.
Of
Shall we
course,
say?
why wouldn't it?
I want it work, and I was spending a fortune. I mean, I was doing well, in my career at that point, so it didn't seem to matter. But then one day, I got a phone call from my lawyer after I'd produced the Terence Trent D'Arby album in '88. So, and he said in his posh voice, Brian Carr, this was my lawyer. He said, "Oh, Martyn, I think you're going to be rather pleased with the check that's just arrived in my office," and it was like for like £280,000
Phew.
out of the blue,
Yeah.
and I'm going, I had to sit down and think about it for a couple of weeks, and I thought, I don't drive. What do I want to spend the money on? I don't want a big house. I've got a lovely flat in Notting Hill. I was perfectly happy there. I don't drive. I don't want a speedboat or anything. I'm not interested in big boys toys, any of that shit. I couldn't think of anything that interests me less, to be honest. I didn't particularly want to buy a huge studio and fill it full of equipment either. I was perfectly happy with what I got. And I'm going, and I put quite a lot, over the next couple of years, put quite a lot away for my pension. Thank God I did. And then I thought, hold on a second. The only thing I've ever really wanted is to have a bolt hole in Venice. So I asked. This is how people who get spoiled behave in the music industry. I went to my record company and said, "Can you talk to Virgin Italy, because they had a branch of Virgin there, and ask them to help me with this, and put an advert in the paper, in the La Gazzettino, for an apartment, because in those days there were hardly any estate agents in Venice. It's a weird thing. Most houses switched hands due to extended family and stuff like that. Anyway, it's all changed now. But so I did that, and I was looking round and round and round. Went on a few recce's, and then saw all these different apartments, and I didn't really. A lot of them were very old, need a lot of renovation, and were going to be very expensive to fit up. And eventually, I spoke to my mate who was a waiter in Venice. I said, "I'm really just gutted. I can't find anything that I like for the price I can afford." And he said, "Oh, you should come and have a look at our flat, our the condominium where we live. They're not very glamorous, but it's got lovely gardens, and it's modern, and it's light, and you can move straight in." Fell in love with it immediately, bought it for a good price, and I had that flat for 27 years then.
Yeah, we actually stayed in that flat.
Yeah.
Just before you sold it.
And
Wonderful
it's a lovely
place.
location on the Giudecca.
Oh, you can't beat it. You're away from the madding crowds.
That's right. Exactly.
And, if you want Venice, you just get on a boat and go over. And
anyway, the happy ending, I mean, I had to sell it a few years ago to pay for my children's education, etc. But the happy ending is I'm just about to downsize my main house in London, in Primrose Hill, and use some of the proceeds to buy a new flat in Venice for less money than I paid for the old flat, with much better facilities. So I've got an estate agent on it, and they've got about, 20 odd flats I've looked at so far online, and I'm going to narrow it down to 3 or 4 of them.
So you're actually you're at the point of that was going to be my next question. Are you? Well, my next question is we have to go on to the darker side of things now, I'm afraid.
What, Sheffield Wednesday?
No, I said dark, not dark and bleak. No, the darker side for me is this whole Brexit situation.
Oh, God Almighty!
Well, got to be mentioned because I want to know from the horse's mouth if you're prepared, or if you're going to stay in the UK, or are you going to get out of there?
I think that the whole the way it's going to pan out in the short term is we're going to buy somewhere a 2-bedroom place in Venice. So I'm going to be based a lot more in Venice than in London. And I think we'll probably rent. I either just do Airbnb in London, because there's loads of them, or just rent somewhere like a pied à terre in London. But we're not going to buy any, and I'm never going to buy anything else in London.
And I don't think it's feasible now, is it? I mean, the prices have just
Prices are
rocketed.
ridiculous, but also I've had I've had a good time in London. I've been in London for 27 years now. I think I've just kind of I've juiced it. You
Yeah.
know, I don't know what else I can do. And I know there's the Samuel Johnson, when he tired of London, tired of life thing. But you know,
No, no, I don't agree
I
with
don't.
that.
I'm not a country person. I'm a city person.
Yeah.
I love the excitement of cities.
Yeah.
I love being around people. But I also love water. I love Italy. And I don't want to just go and sit in my rocking chair until the Grim Reaper comes. I intend to carry on being productive and creative until the day I die.
But I mean, the birth of the internet at CERN on that single computer that we
Yeah,
spotted when we were there, that has given everybody the opportunity to be creative wherever they are. I mean, come on, you could sit now out on the Canal Grande having a coffee, which we have done with the laptop or the phone and
yeah.
working away. And it's,
Well, you can zoom to Paranel, or
exactly, you can
you
do,
can zoom to the Great Wall of China, or whatever you want to do.
yeah,
So your actual physical location is not so important anymore, and a lot of people actually are moving out of London.
that doesn't surprise me.
A lot of people. There's been in the last since lockdown, there's been a big because I've been talking to estate agents here. There's been a big upsurge in people going. I can get 3 times the amount of space for the price of a small flat in central London.
Yeah.
So, you know, people are doing it. They're moving into places they actually want to live,
Yeah.
like the seaside, the countryside, a quiet suburb, if that's your thing. They don't need to be, who needs to, for instance, the City of London, Canary Wharf, say, for instance. I reckon that after this lockdown is finished, the main bit of it, that there's going to be a lot of problems for the people who are renting those offices because there's no need for a lot of people to be back in the offices again. They might as well get rid of them.
Exactly.
And so you don't, therefore, the knock-on effect of that is you don't need to be within striking distance of them.
Yeah.
And so therefore, all the previous givens about commuters and all that, it's all over.
Yeah, it's out the window, isn't it?
Yeah.
But to carry on that sort of train of thought, and I know you don't like talking about it, or you do like talking about it. I can never really make my mind up. But not being in England now, being a Brit abroad, what's the feeling when you're walking around? What's the feeling when you talk to other people in the UK about Brexit? Have you won? Is it a draw? Have you lost?
Right. One thing you've got to understand about the UK is all the mainstream media have been appropriated by neoliberal interests, right?
Okay.
And multinational corporations,
Yeah.
etc. So the idea that the entire spread of our news aggregation from terrestrial news channels, Sky, radio, BBC, newspapers, magazines, that somehow is meant to cover a wide range of opinions about this stuff. And that's where most people get their information from. It doesn't. That entire spectrum has been now compressed into the right wing of how people receive their truth. So that's what you got to understand. That explains a lot of why people narrowly voted for Brexit, because they've just been brainwashed.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to say. I don't. I mean, me and most of my friends now get our news from a mixed, a healthy ecosystem of various news inputs from different countries around the world, and things that are more trusted. This is ironic. Things like Financial Times, for instance. But also, I mean, I spend more time nowadays reading the New York Times than I do, or the Washington
Post.
a bit Post than I do reading British newspapers, because we're just being fed. We've just been fed shit and kept in the dark like mushrooms.
Well, sadly, I mean, I've shifted over to CNN.
Yeah, CNN was fantastic during the Trump thing.
Oh,
Oh my God, it was the only
amazing. I
thing to
lived
watch.
it.
Yeah,
I
they're good.
lived on
You
that.
know, have you noticed something about CNN? There's none of this kind of like, oh, there are certain things you can't talk about. They
No, no.
will just put it out there.
Yeah.
You know, I remember, right, this is absolutely true for the listeners. I couldn't believe it when it happened to me. I was asked to go down to the BBC broadcasting house in central London to their big newsroom for World Service, BBC World Service, on the telly. And I was being interviewed by a very famous journalist. I can't remember her name now. She's nationless. Um, oh,
Moira Stewart.
no, Asian.
All right. Cut that bit. I've been away for a long time, man.
Wow, that's stretching the definition of Asian a little bit. Anyway, so yeah, she was head of news for World Service, and we had a bit of a chat before I went on. And I was down there to talk about the death of George Michael because I knew him, and she was just making small talk, and she said, "What have you been doing recently?" I'd just come back from a charity trip. It's not, an NGO trip to for an organisation I'm an ambassador for, called In Place of War, and it's about making creative hubs for young people as an alternative to like the misery of living in places of war. And so we went to Palestine, and I was just explaining. I just come back from there. I was deeply shocked by what I saw about the apartheid state basically out there, and the way that they treated the Palestinian people in their own land was just appalling. And I'm just coming at this from a humanitarian point of view, of course. So I was just like talking like I'm talking to you now, and she said, "Oh, you're not allowed to use the word Palestine on the BBC."
Good God.
I said, "What?" I said, I literally was gobsmacked. I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Why is that?" And she got all nervous and everything, and kind of started backtracking a bit. Oh, it's because it's not a country. I said, "Yes, it is. It's recognized by the United Nations and by 180 of the countries of the world.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about?" And she went, and tried to change the subject. So this is the sort of thing. She's the head of BBC World Service News.
Yeah.
This is the sort of thing. This isn't some conspiracy theory shit. This is the basic template for the way the world is organized now. Not just Palestine. It's like they believe that if the news can be presented to you in any way they wish, they will allow themselves to be influenced by outside influences. So it could range from Rupert Murdoch to all the big wigs at the BBC are now either Tory donors or come from large scale stuff. So anyway, I don't want to get too heavy about this, but in reality, we are living in a controlled, very gentle right-wing coup in Britain at the moment.
Sounds very Orwellian, to be
It's
honest with you.
incredibly Orwellian, and that's another reason I want to. Fortunately, we managed to get Irish passports.
Yeah.
For my family, because I'm kind of like both my grandmothers were Irish, and we are. I regard myself as a European, and I am ashamed of the UK at the moment.
Well, I'm afraid I have to say the same thing. I mean, this Brexit thing, not to dwell on it for any longer, but this Brexit thing, literally overnight, made me an immigrant in a country that I've lived in for 22 years.
It's just incredible.
Just overnight, and that's it. And
but you look back at the part of the country you come from in the northeast. Never in a million years would you imagine that 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 firstly they would vote Tory, any of them.
Impossible. It's
Impossible.
impossible.
Same in Sheffield. And I'm glad to say it was still pretty much a clean sweep in Sheffield at the last election, but it was 50-50 Brexit, and there's a big, latent, innate, taught racism in the UK, which comes from the teaching of the British Empire.
Yeah, exactly. It goes. It's almost DNA encoded into us, especially from up north.
Precisely. And another thing, all this, our brave lads in Afghanistan and all that stuff, 90% of them are fucking racists.
Yeah.
When they come back. Yeah. Because they're taught it, not because they were born racist. I bet most of their parents would be horrified. But the flag shaggers, as they're called, I'm telling you, man.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that going on.
And
that's why Keir Starmer, who's head of the Labour Party at the moment, is going down that path, because he thinks that's the way to win back those votes. Well, I'm afraid if you've got to do that, what's the fucking point in being in power anyway?
No, it's just follow. Power comes with responsibility.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid, from my humble view over here, over the water, is that idiot that you've got, and I use the word idiot quite happily, that you've got in power at the moment, Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
He should be taken out and put down like a rabid dog.
Let's not go down that path, but I don't think he's not about to go on a walkabout in Sheffield anytime soon.
Darlington.
Listen, I've got to go, Simon, but it's been an absolute pleasure.
But we've got a couple of questions. What we have to fire through, the important ones, what you give to everybody.
Okay, go on then.
So let's be very quick. I could have gone on all night, but you know that. You knew that, didn't you? You knew it.
You actually have gone on all night.
Well, I didn't speak. You did. So let's quickly get through the very important questions. Favorite film?
Clockwork Orange.
Oh, good choice. Very good choice. Favorite book?
This is so pretentious. You're gonna love this. My favorite book is The Desire and the Pursuit of the Whole, W-H-O-L-E, not H-O-L-E, by Baron Corvo. And this is a slim novella, which is this character is he was I can't remember his real name now. He styled himself Baron Corvo. He was a novel writer he lived in Venice, and he foresaw or presaged his own death in a novel that he wrote, which is ostensibly about the fading aristocracy who often used to go to Venice round about the turn of the 19th, 20th century.
The would-be's.
It's set then. Yeah. Basically, a load of people in Venice who had maybe fallen on hard times, but still lived in palazzi and were keeping up the good appearance, the la bella figura,
Yeah.
And so it's a novel, brilliantly written about Venetian society and what a load of bullshit was going on. But all the time, the thread that ran through it was he was an absolute pauper, but he still dressed well, and he still rode his sandalo everywhere around, which is like a small gondola around, just to look like he was still happening, right?
Yeah.
And he was dying from cholera, right? It's a bit like the Death in Venice story.
Yeah.
And eventually, it's so beautifully written. Most of the novel is kind of ironically funny, a bit dark. And then the final chapters are him rowing over to Campo Santa Marta, the Santa Marta boat stop,
of course,
which used to be kind of literally just fields at that point, because he didn't want anybody to see him dying, and he dies on his sandalo at the end. And that's actually what happened to him.
Oh, wow. And I presume you read that in English, not in Italian,
I read
right?
it in English, yeah. He might have been American.
Okay. I will expect a link to that
Yeah,
when
I
we
don't know.
finish the
I don't.
conversation.
I think it's out of print.
Well, I'll find it somewhere.
Yeah, you can get everything on eBay. I'm sure.
Yeah, just send me the title and I'll have a look at it, because I'm looking
It's the
for a good
desire
read.
and the pursuit of the whole.
Okay.
Yeah.
I shall be looking for that afterwards.
It's
Right,
really
I've
good.
got a very odd question for you now.
Fun.
You know, I hear you saying to people, you know, what's your favorite song, what's your favorite band, stuff like that. I'd like to know what your favorite piece of music is that you've had your hands on.
What do you mean?
What's been your favorite project over the years? Not Heaven 17 or
What do you mean? What
Humanly.
piece of music that I've created
Yeah, what you know,
that has given me the most pleasure?
what did you enjoy most? You know,
Oh,
there's the
right.
working with Tina, there's the working with, I remember the story about walking down the street with Terence Trent D'Arby, and
Yeah.
you know,
To be honest, I think creating a suite of music for the Royal Ballet on the main stage in the Royal Opera House in London with my friend Vanessa Fenton, who's a choreographer. Creating that suite of music in three-dimensional sound in the main theatre just was the biggest pleasure, because it was working. Part of the composition, it was based around the story of Petrushka and a piece of music by, was it Shostakovich or Prokofiev? I always get mixed up. And we basically, myself and Vince created a suite of electronic music around the central piece, which was played by the orchestra.
okay.
So, and we also had Andy Bell singing the role of Petrushka. And
That's got to be beautiful.
we wrote a piece for him. And you know, the tradition is when there's a world premiere, you get to go on stage, or they bring the prima donna brings you out on stage, you know, at the end with the conductor and everything, and the audience, you know, hopefully like it and applaud you, and people throw roses at you, and I'm going, this is just mad. There's loads of roses all over the stage, and the other thing is, if you're talking about legacy of things that you've done in your life, everything that's ever done on the main stage at the Royal Ballet is put, all the costumes, the libretto, the composition, the music, the scenery is all put into storage in case they ever want to do it in repertory in the future. So that's all part of the archives of the Royal Ballet now. And my name is in the archives, you know, with, you know, the you know,
with the greatest of the greatest.
The world premiere of Rite of Spring, you know, and all, you know, some of the greatest works that have ever been created on earth.
Yeah.
And I just thought, even though it's a small work, it was only 20 minutes long. It's complete. It's just made my life, really.
Well, there you go. I mean,
I'm not even trained musician, you know.
Yeah.
I never went to music college. I still can't read music. And it shows that, you know, that literally, if you've got a good ear and a certain amount of talent, you can do anything.
Well, that is a story that I knew partially about it, but I didn't know you were so enthusiastic about it. So that's something I'm going to take away from this meeting. Or this interview as a very big thing, because that is absolutely a beautiful story. You know, I expected you to say, oh yeah, it was working with Tina Turner on Doing the Best, but that is just divine. And that's you, mate. You are a divine, wonderful, beautiful human being.
Oh, thank you.
And I would consider that you're one of my closest friends, and I love you dearly.
I'd like to think so. And I love your family too. And, you know, long may it last.
And I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. And I shall look forward to, I'll look forward to hearing this online one day with the two of us.
You'll be shocked. Yeah. All right, man. I've got to go.
Mate, beautiful talking to you. Take care, man.
See you later.
Bye.